I am Rachel Morgan, a woman of 32 years, and just last Tuesday, the world as I knew it ceased to exist. My husband, Kevin, my anchor, my dearest friend, died of a sudden, brutal heart attack. The shock of it, a visceral blow that reverberated through every cell of my being, still hasn't worn off. It was a phantom limb of pain, an ache that permeated every breath I took. When I called my parents, the words tearing from my throat in ragged, uncontrollable sobs, my mother's voice, distant and slightly irritated, cut through my anguish. "Rachel, we're celebrating Sophia's birthday right now. Can this wait until tomorrow?" The line went dead, leaving an echoing silence that was louder than any scream. My 8-year-old daughter, Lily, and I sat alone that night, huddled together on the sofa, clutching each other as our universe splintered and collapsed around us. We were adrift in an ocean of grief, and the life raft of family, the one I had always believed would be there, was nowhere in sight. I never, not in my wildest, most despairing dreams, imagined my own flesh and blood would abandon us in our darkest hour. But what they did next, what they said, was even worse. If you've ever felt the searing sting of betrayal by family, when you needed them most, when your very soul cried out for comfort and support, please let me know where you're watching from, and subscribe to join others who understand this profound and excruciating pain. Kevin and I were destined, or so it felt, to meet. It happened during our sophomore year at Northwestern University. I was floundering, truly drowning in a seemingly insurmountable economics class, the concepts of supply and demand, of market equilibrium, and most terrifyingly, depreciation curves, a tangled, impenetrable mess in my mind. Then there was Kevin. He was the charming, impossibly patient teaching assistant, with a laugh that sparkled like sunshine and eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, revealing the depth of his genuine warmth. He stayed after class, not just once, but repeatedly, meticulously, to guide me through the labyrinthine equations, explaining depreciation curves with a clarity that finally made sense. His patience was the very first thing I fell head over heels in love with, quickly followed by that infectious laugh, the crinkling eyes, and the quiet strength I sensed beneath his easygoing demeanor. We dated throughout college, our love blossoming amidst late-night study sessions and hurried campus coffees. He proposed on graduation day, a moment etched forever in my memory, the glint of the ring hidden playfully in my diploma case, a symbol of our intertwined future. We married young, at 23, dismissing the well-meaning, albeit conventional, warnings from friends who cautioned us to experience life before settling down. But Kevin was my life. He was the adventure, the experience, the person with whom I wanted to discover every joy, navigate every challenge. Our shared path was our life, and it felt infinitely richer for having found each other so early. After completing his MBA with honors, Kevin landed a coveted position at a prestigious financial advisory firm in the heart of Chicago. He didn't just work hard. He thrived, rapidly ascending the ranks. Clients gravitated to him, drawn by his refreshingly honest approach and his genuine, palpable care for their financial well-being. He wasn't merely adept with numbers. He possessed a rare gift for connecting with people, understanding their anxieties, and guiding them with empathy. That potent combination of financial acumen and profound human understanding made him truly exceptional, a star in his field. We spent 5 wonderful, unhurried years as a couple, building our life together, before deciding, almost simultaneously, that we were ready to expand our family. What we naively believed would be a straightforward, joyful journey morphed into 3 agonizing years of heartbreak, a relentless gauntlet of dashed hopes and emotional exhaustion. 2 miscarriages, each a tiny life lost, a crushing blow to our spirits. Countless doctor appointments, endless tests, and 1 failed round of IVF later. We were emotionally shattered, our financial resources drained, our hopes teetering on the brink of collapse. Just as we began the emotionally taxing discussions about adoption, a quiet, unexpected miracle occurred. I became pregnant with Lily. The pregnancy itself was fraught with complications. I was confined to bed rest for the final 2 months, a period that would have been unbearable without Kevin. He worked from home, transforming himself into my devoted caregiver, bringing me breakfast in bed, gently massaging my swollen feet, and reading pregnancy books aloud to both me and our unborn daughter, his voice a soothing balm. When Lily finally arrived, a tiny perfect bundle, Kevin cried harder than I did, holding her minuscule body against his chest, as if she were made of the most delicate glass, a treasure beyond measure. For 8 beautiful, vibrant years, we were the family I had always dreamed of having. Kevin, despite possessing absolutely no prior knowledge of soccer, volunteered to coach Lily's team. He learned alongside her, poring over YouTube tutorials late into the night, after she was asleep, determined to be the best coach he could be. He never, not once, missed a school event, a PTA meeting, a talent show, a parent-teacher conference, or a doctor's appointment. His digital calendar was a meticulously organized tapestry of reminders about Lily's activities, color-coded by importance, a testament to his unwavering dedication. There were warning signs about his health, subtle whispers that we, in our blissful bubble of family life, casually ignored. Several episodes of chest pain, which he rationalized as mere stress from his demanding job. Occasional shortness of breath, which he dismissed as a result of being out of shape. Our doctor, during a routine checkup, had noted slightly elevated blood pressure, but assured us it was normal for a man approaching 40 with a high-pressure job. Take some aspirin, he'd advised, almost as an afterthought. Exercise more, cut back on sodium. Standard advice, delivered and received with a dismissive shrug. We took it all too casually, never imagining the true, terrifying implications. The morning it happened started like any other Tuesday, bathed in the soft glow of a Chicago dawn. Kevin, humming off-key, made Lily's favorite dinosaur-shaped pancakes, each one a miniature work of culinary art. I packed Lily's lunch, the scent of maple syrup and warm batter filling our kitchen. He kissed us both goodbye, a light touch on my cheek, a playful nudge on Lily's head, promising to be home early for Lily's school art show, an event he wouldn't miss for the world. His last words to me, delivered with a mock-serious furrow of his brow, were, "Don't forget to pick up more maple syrup, the real stuff, not that corn syrup garbage." Such a mundane, ordinary, impossibly trivial final conversation, a fragment of everyday life that would forever echo with the weight of eternity. At 10:47 a.m., my phone vibrated, shattering the morning's quiet rhythm. It was Amanda, Kevin's assistant, her voice a fractured whisper, shaking so badly I could barely decipher her words. "Rachel." Kevin collapsed, during a client meeting. "The ambulance is here. They're taking him to Northwestern Memorial." The coffee mug I was holding slipped from my numb fingers, plummeting to the tiled floor. The sound of ceramic shattering seemed to explode in my memory, a sharp, violent punctuation mark to the dawning horror. I called our neighbor Ellen, a kind, steady presence, to pick up Lily from school. Then I was in my car, tearing through the streets of Chicago, breaking every speed limit, my vision blurring with unshed tears. I prayed the entire way, bargaining with God in desperate, guttural whispers, promising anything, everything, if only Kevin would be okay. But I was too late. Kevin was pronounced dead at 11:23 a.m., mere minutes before my desperate arrival. Massive heart attack, they said, their voices clinical, detached. Nothing could have been done, they assured me, as if those sterile words could somehow ease the crushing weight of finality. Seeing Kevin's body, lying so still in the sterile hospital room, was utterly surreal. He looked as though he were simply sleeping, peaceful, serene, save for the unnatural stillness of his chest, the absence of its gentle rise and fall. His skin was still warm when I touched his face, a heartbreaking anchor to the life that had just been extinguished. I kept expecting him to open his eyes, to offer that crinkling smile, and tell me this was all a terrible, cruel mistake. The next few hours passed in a disorienting haze of paperwork and muffled phone calls. The funeral home director, a kind but somber woman, needed decisions I was utterly unprepared to make. Cremation or burial? What kind of service? Did he have a favorite suit? Questions that seemed impossible to answer, when all I wanted was to crawl into bed with my husband, just one last time, to feel his familiar warmth beside me. The hardest part, the truly agonizing part, was the drive home, knowing I had to deliver the unimaginable news to Lily, that her father was never coming back. How do you explain death, this immense, incomprehensible void, to an 8-year-old? How do you tell her that the daddy who had made dinosaur pancakes that very morning was gone forever, vanished from her life? Telling Lily about her father was, without a doubt, the most difficult, heart-wrenching moment of my entire life. When she got into my car after school, her bright, innocent face immediately registered that something was terribly wrong. "Where's Daddy?" she asked, her voice small, clutching her backpack in her tiny hands. "He promised to come to my art show tonight." The words pierced my already shattered heart. I pulled over to the side of the road, the familiar suburban landscape a blur outside the window. I couldn't focus on driving, couldn't risk our safety when my own world had just capsized. Turning to face her, I took her small hands in mine, their warmth a stark contrast to the cold dread in my chest. "Lily, something very sad happened today. Daddy got very sick at work, and his heart stopped working." Her face scrunched up in a mix of confusion and nascent fear. "Can the doctors fix it?" The innocent hope in her question, so pure, so childlike, broke something fragile inside me. "No, sweetie," I managed, my voice a strangled whisper. "When someone's heart stops working completely, the doctors can't fix it. Daddy died today." She stared at me for what felt like an eternity, her blue eyes, so much like Kevin's, wide and unblinking, slowly processing this incomprehensible, alien information. Then, her voice barely audible, she asked, "Does that mean Daddy isn't coming home? Ever?" When I nodded, unable to speak past the torrent of tears now streaming down my face, she let out a wail that didn't sound human. It was primal, a gut-wrenching sound that tore at the very fabric of my soul, the pure, unadulterated sound of a child's heart breaking into a million irreparable pieces. She threw herself into my arms, her small body shaking violently with sobs. "I want Daddy! Please, I want my Daddy!" There was nothing, absolutely nothing, I could do but hold her, fiercely, desperately, and cry with her, parked on the side of the road as life continued all around us, oblivious, uncaring, to our shattered world. That evening, after what felt like an endless struggle, I finally managed to coax Lily to sleep in my bed, her small hand clutching Kevin's unwashed T-shirt for comfort, its faint scent a painful reminder of his absence. It was then, in the quiet solitude of the night, that the full, crushing weight of my loss hit me with a physical force that left me gasping. I stumbled into the bathroom, closing the door softly so Lily wouldn't hear, and broke down completely. The grief was a physical pain, overwhelming and suffocating, like being repeatedly punched in the chest, each blow stealing my breath. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think. I needed my mom and dad. They would know what to do. They would hold me, they would fix this impossible ache. With shaking hands, I called my parents. They had been married for 40 years, had weathered countless storms, experienced their own share of losses. Surely, they would know what to say, how to guide me through this unfathomable, impossible time. My mother answered on the 5th ring, the sound of laughter and music, boisterous and celebratory, clearly audible in the background. "Rachel, can I call you back?" she asked, her voice tinged with impatience. "We're in the middle of Sophia's birthday dinner." "Mum," I choked out, the word barely a whisper. unable to form coherent sentences through my racking sobs. Kevin died this morning. He had a heart attack at work. He's gone. There was a pause, a beat of disorienting silence, and then I heard her muffle the phone, saying something to someone else in the background, her words indistinct, but clearly a brief diversion from the party. When she returned, her voice was slightly more somber, a thin veil of concern, but still undeniably distracted. "Oh my goodness, that's terrible," she said, almost mechanically. "Are you sure? Maybe there's been a mistake." The fact that I had to convince my own mother, the woman who had brought me into this world, that my husband was actually irrevocably dead, felt like yet another trauma heaped onto the already unbearable pile. "I saw his body, Mom," I whispered, the words raw, aching. "There's no mistake." "Well, this is quite a shock," she continued, seemingly impervious to my anguish. "But sweetie, we're in the middle of Sophia's 40th birthday celebration. Everyone's here, we've got the caterers. Can you manage tonight? And we'll come by tomorrow when things settle down." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It felt like a cruel joke. My sister's birthday party, a 40th, but still a party, took precedence over her son, in-law's sudden, tragic death, over her daughter's acute, paralyzing grief, over her 8-year-old granddaughter's shattered world. It was unfathomable. My father got on the phone then, his voice a familiar, booming presence. "Rachel, this is awful news. Is Kevin's life insurance policy up to date? You know, you should call the company first thing tomorrow." Not, "I'm coming right over." Not, "What can we do to help?" Not a single word of comfort or concern for Lily or me. But a cold, calculating question about life insurance. As if my husband's body was barely cold, and his worth was already being reduced to a monetary sum. "I can't believe this is your response," I said, my voice hollow, devoid of emotion. "My husband just died. Lily lost her father, and you're at a party." "No, Rachel," my father said, adopting that condescending, paternalistic tone he'd used throughout my childhood. The one that always made me feel small and irrational. "Sophia has been planning this milestone birthday for months. Everyone took time off work to be here. We can't just walk out, be reasonable." Reasonable, as if grief, raw and untamed, followed any rules of logic or reason. "Forget I called," I said, the words barely escaping my lips, and hung up, the click of the phone final, definitive. Within minutes, my phone vibrated with a flurry of text messages, then calls, from friends who had somehow already heard the devastating news. Kevin's college roommate, Brian, my colleague Jennifer, even my old high school friend, Taylor, who I hadn't spoken to in years, all offering heartfelt condolences, asking what they could do to help, their words a lifeline in the churning darkness. Strangers, acquaintances, showed more compassion, more genuine concern, than my own family. My neighbor Ellen, a beacon of quiet strength, came over with a comforting casserole and sat with me at the kitchen table. As I numbly tried to make a list of people to notify, she offered to stay the night, but I gently declined. I needed to be alone with Lily, to begin the impossible task of figuring out how we would navigate this new, terrifying reality without Kevin. That first night was endless, a terrifying black hole. Lily had nightmares, waking in sudden terror, crying out for her daddy. I lay beside her, stroking her hair, whispering stories about Kevin, about how much he loved her, about how brave he thought she was, how proud he was of her. Eventually, she succumbed to an exhausted, fitful sleep. But I remained wide awake, staring at the ceiling, the unbearable void of Kevin's warmth beside me, a searing, constant ache. Morning came, a cruel, mocking dawn, and with it, the crushing realization that this wasn't a nightmare I could wake from. This was our life now, a life irrevocably altered, a life without Kevin, and a life where my own parents couldn't be bothered to show up when I needed them most. The sting of their indifference was a festering wound, secondary to my grief but still profoundly painful. Kevin's funeral was scheduled for Saturday, 4 agonizing days after his death. Those days passed in a disorienting fog of arrangements, mountains of paperwork, and the ceaseless, heartbreaking effort to comfort Lily while barely holding myself together. My parents called once, briefly, their voices detached, to ask what time the service started and if they should wear black, or if it was a celebration of life with colorful attire. They didn't offer to help with arrangements, didn't ask how Lily was coping, didn't offer a single word of genuine solace. The day of the funeral dawned bright and sunny, a cruelly beautiful day for such a dark, somber occasion. Lily, with a quiet strength that belied her years, insisted on wearing a blue dress. Because Daddy always said I looked like a princess in blue. I helped her with her hair, my fingers trembling slightly as I wove a small braid along her temple, just the way Kevin used to do on special occasions. We arrived at the funeral home an hour early, a small island of two amidst the growing tide of mourners, to greet people. Kevin's colleagues from the financial firm arrived first, somber in their dark suits, many of them openly weeping, their grief palpable. They had lost not just a co-worker but a true friend. Each of them took time with Lily, bending down to her level, sharing small, precious stories about her father, tales she might one day treasure, tiny fragments of him that could live on. My parents and Sophia were supposed to arrive early too, to offer support, to be a visible sign of family unity. Instead, they texted 20 minutes before the service was scheduled to begin, a brief, terse message claiming they were running late due to traffic. They finally walked in just as people were being seated, making a small commotion as they ostentatiously found their places in the front row, the very seats I had specifically reserved for family. My mother hugged me briefly, her expensive perfume overwhelming my senses, a stark contrast to the scent of lilies and grief that permeated the room. "The traffic was terrible," she whispered, her voice laced with a rehearsed exasperation, and Sophia had a hard time finding something appropriate to wear on such short notice. Short notice, as if Kevin's death were an inconvenient dinner party, an unexpected social engagement for which one had to scramble. Throughout the entire service, I was acutely, painfully aware of Sophia discreetly checking her phone, its pale glow a jarring distraction. My father glanced at his watch repeatedly, his impatience barely concealed. My mother, with an almost theatrical flourish, dabbed at dry eyes for show, a performance of grief that felt hollow and insulting. Meanwhile, Kevin's colleagues, our true friends, were genuinely distraught, their raw, unfeigned grief a stark contrast to my family's detachment. Their tears were real, their sorrow profound. In stark, painful contrast to my family's performance, Kevin's brother, Marcus, showed true, unvarnished devastation. He had flown in from Japan, where he taught English, arriving just hours before the service, a testament to his boundless love for his brother. He looked utterly exhausted and hollow-eyed, having clearly not slept during the 30-hour journey. He sat next to Lily throughout the entire service, his large hand gently but firmly holding her small one, their identical blue eyes, both so much like Kevin's, filled with unshed tears. When it came time for the eulogy, my legs felt like lead. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I wasn't sure I could do it. The words seemed to stick in my throat, choked by the enormity of my grief. But then I looked at Lily, sitting there so brave and small in her blue dress, her face a pale reflection of her father's strength, and found the strength, somehow, to walk to the podium. I spoke about Kevin's unwavering kindness, his absolute integrity, his boundless, unconditional love for his daughter. I spoke about his terrible, groan-inducing jokes that somehow always made us laugh at the same time, about his irrational hatred of cilantro and his passionate, unyielding defense of proper, genuine maple syrup. I spoke about the way he always put family first, his priorities clear and unwavering. The bitter irony of those last words wasn't lost on me as I glanced. almost inadvertently, at my parents, who were already subtly gathering their things as I concluded, clearly eager to make their escape. During the reception at our house afterward, a blur of hushed condolences and sympathetic glances, I overheard my father talking to my Uncle James near the drinks table. Kevin was doing very well at that firm, he mused, his voice low but audible. Partner track. The life insurance alone must be substantial, not to mention the investments. Rachel will be set for life. It took every ounce of my rapidly dwindling self-control not to confront him then and there, to demand how he could be thinking about money, about my windfall, on the very day we had buried my husband, his own son-in-law. But I was too emotionally exhausted, too utterly spent, too focused on ensuring Lily was okay, to start a scene. My mother and Sophia barely lifted a finger to help with the reception, leaving most of the work to Kevin's colleagues' wives and my ever-supportive friends. They sat in the living room, primly accepting condolences as if they were the primary mourners, the most deeply aggrieved, while I moved through my own home like a ghost, mechanically thanking people for coming, accepting casseroles I knew I would never eat. Meanwhile, Kevin's parents, Deanna and Robert, though utterly devastated by the loss of their only son, were models of genuine support, their quiet strength a profound comfort. His mother, Diana, gently took over caring for Lily during the reception, making sure she ate, shielding her from well-meaning but overwhelming guests. His father, Robert, quietly and efficiently organized the cleanup afterward, staying until the very last guest had departed, leaving the house in a semblance of order. The contrast between Kevin's family and my own was stark, painful, and illuminating. As I watched my in-laws support each other in their grief, while also finding the remarkable strength to support me and Lily, I felt the absence of that same unconditional love from my own parents like a physical wound, a gaping hole in my heart. Kevin's will had been mentioned briefly during a conversation with the funeral director, a necessary formality I was barely able to process. But I couldn't bear to think about legal matters yet, the sheer weight of it all too heavy. Thomas, Kevin's friend from law school, who had handled our estate planning, gently suggested we wait a week or two before discussing the details. "There's no rush," he assured me, his voice kind and calm. "Everything is in order, and you and Lily are well provided for." Kevin made sure of that. As the house finally emptied of guests, my parents and Sophia made quick, flimsy excuses about getting on the road before dark. They left with perfunctory hugs and vague promises to call soon. They didn't offer to stay and help clean up, didn't ask if Lily and I wanted company, didn't acknowledge, even for a moment, that this would be our first night, our first fragile attempt at life, after officially saying goodbye to Kevin. Instead, Marcus and Kevin's parents stayed. Diana meticulously made up the guest room for Kevin's parents and the sofa for Marcus. "We'll be right here if you need anything during the night," Diana said, hugging me tightly, her embrace a balm to my aching soul. "You're not alone, Rachel. Remember that." But as I lay in bed that night, listening to Lily's soft, even breathing beside me, clutching Kevin's T-shirt again, I couldn't help feeling that in one crucial, devastating way, I was very much alone. The people who should have been my first line of support, my bedrock in a time of unimaginable crisis, had proven themselves utterly unworthy of that sacred role. 2 weeks after the funeral, a period of numb, mechanical existence, I was sitting at the kitchen table, an open binder of daunting paperwork before me, trying to make sense of our complex health insurance situation. The doorbell rang, a jarring interruption to my grim task. Lily was at school. It was her first week back since losing her father, a new, agonizing hurdle in her young life. Her teachers were keeping a close eye on her, sending me regular, comforting updates for which I was profoundly grateful. Through the peephole, I saw my parents standing on the porch. My father straightening his golf shirt, with an air of practiced nonchalance. My mother meticulously checking her reflection in her compact mirror, adjusting her lipstick. I hadn't spoken to them since the funeral, beyond a few generic, impersonal text messages like, "Thinking of you," and "Hope you're doing okay." There had been no real communication, no genuine outreach. I opened the door, not bothering to hide my surprise. "I didn't know you were coming over. We thought we'd check in, see how you and Lily are doing," my mother said, brushing past me into the house, her voice breezy, as if this were a casual drop in. "Is she at school? Good. We can talk openly." It should have been my first clear clue that this wasn't simply a supportive visit, that there was an agenda, but I was too emotionally drained, too raw with grief, to pick up on the subtle warning signs. They settled themselves in the living room, making themselves comfortable, while I, automatically falling into the ingrained hostess role, made coffee, even though they should have been taking care of me. When I brought in the mugs, my father was already examining the new sound system Kevin had installed just a month before his death, running his hand along the sleek speakers. "Nice setup," he commented, his voice almost admiring. Kevin had good taste in electronics. He did. I agreed. The simple past tense of the verb still a knife twist in my heart. After a few minutes of awkward, strained small talk about Lily's school and my mother's meticulously maintained garden club, my father cleared his throat, that familiar, almost theatrical sound he always made before discussing serious matters. "Rachel, we wanted to talk to you about your situation," he began, setting his coffee mug down precisely on a coaster, as if every detail of this uncomfortable conversation had to be perfectly placed. "My situation?" I asked, genuinely confused, my mind still grappling with insurance forms. "Your financial situation," my mother clarified, exchanging a knowing glance with my father, a silent, complicit agreement passing between them. "Now that you're adjusting to life without Kevin." I stared at them, the words slowly, agonizingly, sinking in, not comprehending at first what they were getting at. "I'm not sure what you mean. Kevin left us well provided for." "Yes, well, that's what we wanted to discuss," my father said, leaning forward, his voice taking on a conspiratorial tone. "Your mother and I are getting older. Our retirement fund took a bit of a hit in the last market downturn, and with healthcare costs what they are." The implication hung in the air for a heavy moment, before a horrifying realization dawned on me. "Are you asking me for money?" Now, my mother, for once, had the grace to look slightly embarrassed, a faint flush rising on her cheeks, but my father, emboldened, pressed on. "We thought, given Kevin's position at the firm and his life insurance policy, that you might be in a position to help family. After all, we are your parents." The sheer, breathtaking audacity of their request left me momentarily speechless, my breath caught in my throat. My husband wasn't even cold in his grave, and they were here in my home, with their hands outstretched, ready to feast on his legacy. "How much are you thinking?" I asked, my voice flat, devoid of emotion, a dangerous calm descending over me. My father, apparently missing my tone completely, brightened, mistaking my quiet for acquiescence. "Well, we were thinking something substantial would make sense. Perhaps 50% of the life insurance payout. That would secure our retirement and leave plenty for you and Lily. 50% of my widowed daughter's support, to secure our retirement." I repeated the words slowly, making sure I understood, letting the full weight of their outrageousness sink in. "The daughter you couldn't be bothered to comfort when her husband died, because you were at a birthday party." My mother flinched, visibly, but my father remained utterly unperturbed, his composure unbroken. "Now, Rachel, there's no need to be emotional about this. It's just practical, financial planning. And we did come to the funeral." "How generous of you to attend my husband's funeral," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm, each word a venomous dart. "We raised you, Rachel. My mother interjected, finding her voice, her tone indignant. We paid for your college education. We helped with the down payment on your first house. I think we deserve some consideration now that you've come into money. Come into money. I was shouting now, the pain and rage of the past 2 weeks, bottled up and festering, finally boiling over, overflowing in an uncontrolled torrent. I didn't win the lottery. I lost the love of my life, the father of my child. And you're treating it like I hit some financial jackpot. My father's expression hardened, his face tightening with disapproval. There's no need to be dramatic. Kevin knew the risks with his heart condition. He should have taken better care of himself, and now that he's gone, it's just practical to discuss how his assets should be distributed. Family should help family. In that moment, as my father casually, cruelly blamed Kevin for his own death, while simultaneously trying to profit from it, something snapped inside me, irrevocably. The grief that had left me passive and numb for 2 weeks suddenly crystallized into razor-sharp clarity. The fog lifted, revealing an incandescent fury. "Get out," I said quietly, each word enunciated with chilling precision. "We'll be reasonable." My mother began, her voice wavering. "Get out of my house!" I screamed, the force of my anger physically propelling me to my feet, my body shaking with its intensity. "How dare you come here asking for Kevin's money? How dare you blame him for dying? He was worth 100 of you. And you couldn't even be bothered to comfort your own daughter when she was breaking apart." My parents looked genuinely shocked at my outburst. They had never, not once, seen me truly angry before, having successfully raised me to be accommodating, to avoid conflict, to be the good daughter, while Sophia was allowed to be the demanding, tempestuous one. "We're only asking for what's fair," my father said stiffly, rising to his feet, his dignity wounded. "We're your parents, Rachel. We deserve respect. Respect is earned," I replied, my voice shaking with residual fury. "And you've earned none. Now get out before Lily comes home and hears what kind of people her grandparents really are." They left in a huff, my mother making indignant noises about me being ungrateful, and my father muttering darkly about reconsidering our relationship. I slammed the door shut behind them, the sound echoing through the suddenly silent house, and sank to the floor, trembling with a potent mixture of rage, hurt, and a strange, unfamiliar sense of power. Later that afternoon, when I picked Lily up from school, she seemed more withdrawn than usual. Her bright spirit dimmed. In the car, she finally spoke up, her voice small. "Mummy, why were Grandma and Grandpa at our house today?" My heart sank. "Did you see them?" She nodded. "Mrs. Wilson let me go to the bathroom during math, and I saw their car from the school window. Did they bring something for us?" The innocent, hopeful question broke my heart anew, a fresh fissure in the fragile walls I was trying to build around myself. "No, sweetie," I admitted, my voice gentle. "They just came to talk to me about some grown-up things." "Did they ask about Daddy's money?" she asked, surprising me with her sudden perception, her child's intuition cutting through the layers of adult pretense. "What makes you say that?" I asked, feigning surprise. Lily looked down at her hands, twisting them together. "I heard Grandpa at the funeral telling Uncle James that we would get lots of money because Daddy died. Is that true? That my 8-year-old daughter had overheard such a callous, financially motivated conversation made me physically ill. "Lily, your daddy made sure we would be taken care of, yes." I explained carefully, choosing my words with precision. "But money doesn't make up for not having him here with us." She nodded sagely, her eyes wise beyond her years. "I would give all the money in the world to have Daddy back." "Me too, baby," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Me too." That night, after Lily was finally asleep, I called Marcus, who had returned to Japan, but was planning to come back for an extended stay during his summer break to help us adjust. I recounted the entire, appalling story of my parents' visit and their outrageous demand. Are you kidding me? He exploded, his voice reverberating with disbelief and outrage, even across the thousands of miles separating us. They want half of Kevin's life insurance. That's insane, Rachel. I know, I said, my voice heavy with exhaustion. I still can't believe they actually asked, but I'm worried they might not let it go. My father can be very stubborn when he thinks he deserves something. Marcus was quiet for a moment, processing the enormity of it. Kevin talked to me about his financial planning. You know, he finally said, his voice softer, tinged with sadness. He was very thorough, wanted to make sure Lily would be taken care of through college, and beyond if anything ever happened to him. He would be furious about your parents trying to take that security away from her. I know, I said softly, the familiar ache of missing Kevin intensifying, a fresh wave of grief washing over me. I think I need to talk to Thomas about the legal situation, just to be prepared. That's a good idea, Marcus agreed, his voice firm. And Rachel, don't let them manipulate you. Kevin protected you and Lily for a reason. The next day, fortified by Marcus's words, I met with Thomas at his office. He was sympathetic but sadly, not surprised by my parents' behavior. Unfortunately, I see this kind of thing more often than you'd think, he said, reviewing Kevin's meticulously organized will and insurance documents. But I can assure you, everything is airtight. Kevin designated you as the sole beneficiary of his life insurance and retirement accounts. Your parents have absolutely no legal claim to any of it. Could they contest the will? I asked, a knot of worry tightening in my stomach. Thomas shook his head decisively. The will is clear and properly executed, and even if they tried, they have no grounds. Kevin was of sound mind, and parents have no automatic right to inherit from adult children, especially when there's a spouse and child. That reassurance should have made me feel better, should have lightened the immense burden on my shoulders. But as I left Thomas's office, my phone buzzed with a string of furious text messages. From my father, one need to discuss this situation like adults. Call me. From my mother, I raised you better than this, Rachel. Family comes first. And surprisingly, from Sophia, you've always been selfish, but this is low even for you. Mom and Dad deserve better. The sheer, breathtaking hypocrisy of Sophia, who had barely looked up from her phone during Kevin's funeral, accusing Mier of being selfish, was almost laughable. Almost if it weren't so profoundly painful. That evening, as Lily and I were eating dinner, the phone rang again. It was my father. When I didn't answer, he left a voicemail, his voice stern, demanding a family meeting at their house on Sunday afternoon. This concerns all of us, Rachel. Be there. At 2 o'clock. Bring Lily. I set the phone down, my appetite suddenly gone. Involving Lily in this ugly, mercenary situation was the last thing I wanted. The thought twisting my gut. But maybe it was time to have everything out in the open, to make a final, decisive break if necessary. With Thomas's firm reassurance about the legal aspects, I felt a new surge of confidence in standing my ground. Was that Grandpa? Lily asked, pushing her peas around her plate with a fork. Yes, I admitted, choosing my words carefully. He wants us to come over on Sunday. Lily was quiet for a moment, her brow furrowed in thought. Then she asked, her voice small. Do we have to go? The fact that my daughter, who had once loved visiting her grandparents, now seemed so reluctant, spoke volumes, a painful indictment of their behavior. I think we should, I said, my voice gentle but firm. Sometimes it's important to face difficult situations directly, to stand up for what's right. She nodded, a look of quiet determination crossing her face that reminded me, painfully, etchingly of Kevin. Okay. But can I bring something with me? I have an idea. What kind of idea? I asked, curious about her sudden intensity. Just something Daddy taught me about standing up for yourself. She said cryptically, a faint, secretive smile playing on her lips. "Can I use the computer after dinner?" I agreed, wondering what my 8-year-old was planning, but trusting that whatever it was, it came from the good heart and strong values her father had helped instill in her. The days following my parents' visit were a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. The ever-present, crushing weight of grief for Kevin remained, but now it was complicated, made more bitter, by a corrosive anger and profound sense of betrayal toward my family. In quiet moments, when Lily was asleep, I found myself revisiting memories from my childhood, seeing them in a new, harsh, unforgiving light. There were the dance recitals where my parents left early, almost furtively, to make it to Sophia's softball games, but never, not once, the other way around. The Christmas when I received practical, sensible clothes while Sophia, 2 years my senior, got the expensive art supplies we both had asked for. Her desires always prioritized. The way my academic achievements were simply expected, a baseline, while Sophia's barely passing grades were celebrated as trying her best, small inequities, seemingly insignificant individually, but forming a clear, painful pattern when viewed collectively. I called Amanda, Kevin's assistant, who had miraculously become a true friend in the short, tumultuous weeks since his death. "Am I overreacting?" I asked her, my voice raw with vulnerability, after explaining my parents' demand. "Is it normal to feel this angry, or is it just grief making everything worse?" "Rachel," she said firmly, her voice unwavering, "if my parents had done that to me, they'd be dead to me. What they did is beyond inappropriate, it's cruel, it's disgusting." Her fierce validation helped, a much-needed confirmation that I wasn't losing my mind. A long, cathartic conversation with Marcus that evening helped even more. He was planning to take a leave of absence from his teaching position to come stay with us for a few months. A kindness that brought me to tears, a profound act of love and loyalty. "Kevin made me promise," he explained, his voice thick with emotion. "Years ago, when you were pregnant with Lily, he made me swear that if anything ever happened to him, I would be there for you both. I intend to keep that promise." The contrast between Marcus's unwavering loyalty to his brother's wishes and my own parents' mercenary behavior couldn't have been starker. A searing indictment of their character. Meanwhile, Lily had been unusually focused on some secret project she was working on in her room. Hunched over her desk with colored pencils and paper, a fierce concentration on her small face. When I asked what she was doing, she just smiled secretively and said, "Something important for Sunday." On Saturday, the day before the dreaded family meeting, I decided to review Kevin's financial documents more thoroughly, wanting to be fully informed, fully armed, before the inevitable confrontation with my family. Kevin had been meticulously organized about our finances, keeping everything neatly filed in a home office cabinet. As I went through the folders, I found a sealed envelope, tucked away, with my name on it in Kevin's familiar handwriting. With trembling hands, a knot of apprehension forming in my stomach, I opened it to find a letter, dated just 3 months earlier, around the time of his last physical. "My dearest Rachel." It began, his familiar voice echoing in my mind as I read the words. "If you're reading this, it means the doctor's concerns about my heart were more serious than I let on. I didn't want to worry you, to burden you with my fears, but I've updated our will and insurance policies just in case. Everything goes to you, with robust provisions for Lily's education and future. Use it well. Live fully, and know that my greatest joy, my true purpose, was being your husband and Lily's father." I broke down sobbing, both devastated that he had kept his health concerns from me, the weight of his secret a painful blow, and deeply, profoundly moved by his foresight, his protective love, his boundless care for us. Kevin had known there was a risk, a shadow looming over his health, and had quietly prepared for it, trying to spare me the worry, to shield me from the fear. It was so typically him, both frustrating in its guardedness and loving in its intent, in equal measure. The letter continued with specific instructions about the insurance policies and investments, but then a paragraph that caught my attention, making my breath hitch in my throat. I've set up a separate trust for Lily that can't be accessed until she's 25, except for education expenses. This is important, Rachel. Your father has approached me twice about investment opportunities that were thinly veiled requests for money, attempts to dip into our savings. I declined politely, but he seemed to think my death would create an opportunity for him to access funds through you. Don't let that happen. Your parents have made poor financial choices for years, their decisions often driven by short-sighted desires. And while I sympathize, Lily's future cannot be compromised to bail them out. The revelation that my father had already tried to extract money from Kevin while he was alive added another searing layer of betrayal, a new dimension to their callousness. Kevin had protected me from this knowledge, probably trying to preserve my relationship with my parents, to spare me further heartache. Even facing his own mortality, he had put my feelings first, his love a constant shield. Armed with this new, damning information, I called Thomas again, needing to verify that the trust Kevin mentioned was indeed secure from any claims, any greedy machinations. He assured me it was ironclad, impenetrable. He also suggested I bring a copy of Kevin's letter to the family meeting. It's not legally necessary, he explained, but it might be incredibly useful to have Kevin's explicit wishes documented if they try to pressure you emotionally, to leverage guilt. Sunday morning arrived, a bright, deceptively peaceful day, imbued with a palpable sense of impending confrontation. Lily was unusually quiet as we got dressed, a silent, determined set to her small shoulders that reminded me, uncannily, of Kevin before an important, high-stakes client meeting. "Are you sure you want to come?" I asked her one last time as we prepared to leave, my voice gentle. "You could stay with Ellen instead, if you'd rather." She shook her head firmly, her eyes resolute. "I need to be there, Mom, for Daddy." For on the drive to my parents' house, Lily clutched a manila envelope tightly to her chest, still refusing to tell me exactly what was inside. "It's a message from me and Daddy," was all she would say, her secretiveness adding to the tension of the moment. As we pulled into the familiar driveway of the suburban home, where I'd grown up, I noticed several cars I recognized as belonging to my aunts and uncles. My parents had apparently invited an audience, perhaps thinking I would be less likely to refuse them in front of extended family, that the pressure of public opinion would break my resolve. "Ready?" I asked Lily, my hand hovering over the ignition, bracing myself. She nodded, her face solemn beyond her years. "I'm ready, Mom. Don't worry." We walked to the front door hand in hand, both of us drawing silent strength from the other, a small, defiant unit against the looming storm. Before I could even ring the bell, the door swung open to reveal my mother, dressed formally, as if for church, her face set in a practiced expression of concern, a careful mask of propriety. "Rachel, Lily, come in. Everyone's waiting in the living room." Lily followed her through the familiar hallway, past the framed family photos that now seemed to mock me, into the large living room where I'd spent countless childhood Christmases and birthdays. Now, it felt like walking into a carefully orchestrated ambush. My father sat in his imposing recliner, positioned like a judge presiding over a courtroom, his posture radiating authority. Sophia was perched on the arm of the sofa, scrolling through her phone, her attention clearly elsewhere. Around the room sat my Aunt Rita, Uncle James, and my father's brother Terry with his wife Barbara, all looking uncomfortable but curious. "Thank you for coming," my father said formally, his tone stiff, as if this were a grim business meeting rather than a family gathering. "We have important matters to discuss." I remained standing, keeping Lily close to my side, a protective arm around her small shoulders. "Before we start," I interjected, my voice clear and steady. I want to be clear that whatever you have to say, you can say in front of Lily. She has a right to know what's happening in her family, especially when it concerns her future. My mother frowned, her carefully constructed facade crumbling slightly. Rachel, this is hardly appropriate conversation for a child. If it's not appropriate for her to hear, then it's not appropriate for you to be asking. I replied evenly, my gaze unwavering. This concerns her future too. My father cleared his throat again, a nervous habit. Fine, we'll get right to the point. Your mother and I have been discussing the family financial situation. As you know, we helped you considerably throughout your life, from college tuition to the down payment on your first house. I bit back the retort that they had paid half as much for my education as they had for Sophia's art school, which she never even completed. This wasn't the time for old grievances, for dredging up past resentments. We believe, he continued, emboldened by my silence, that given the substantial windfall you've received from Kevin's passing, it's only fair that you assist the family in return. We're proposing a distribution that would secure our retirement and also provide some assistance to Sophia, who, as you know, has struggled financially as an artist. Sophia, at the mention of her name, looked up from her phone long enough to give me a smug, almost triumphant smile, as if my husband's death were some cosmic balancing of the scales between us, a long overdue retribution. I've prepared a breakdown of what we consider a fair distribution. My father said, passing me a printed document, his voice dripping with self-importance. As you'll see, we're suggesting 50% of the life insurance proceeds be directed to your mother and me, with an additional 15% allocated to Sophia. I scanned the document, my eyes widening in disbelief, which detailed not just percentages, but actual, staggering dollar amounts. They had somehow discovered the exact value of Kevin's life insurance policy, likely through my Uncle James, who worked in the insurance industry. You want 65% of the money that's meant to secure my daughter's future after losing her father. I stated flatly, my voice devoid of emotion, a stark calm before the storm. Money that Kevin earned and specifically designated for us. Family takes care of family, Rachel. My mother interjected, her voice taking on a plaintive tone. Your father and I are getting older. Our medical expenses are increasing, and you have to think about the bigger picture. The bigger picture, I repeated, my voice rising, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Like how you couldn't be bothered to leave Sophia's birthday party when my husband died. That bigger picture. An uncomfortable, heavy silence fell over the room. My Aunt Rita shifted in her seat, looking profoundly embarrassed, her gaze averted. At least someone had the decency to recognize how inappropriate, how utterly grotesque this all was. Now, Rachel, my father said, his voice regaining its patronizing tone. We've apologized for that unfortunate timing. But you have to understand, we had guests from out of town. We couldn't just leave. Actually, you could have? I replied, my voice steady, my eyes fixed on his. You chose not to. This isn't productive. Sophia cut in, her voice sharp with impatience. The point is, you're suddenly rich while the rest of us are struggling. Mom and Dad sacrificed for you your whole life. They deserve security in their old age. And what about Lily's security? I asked, my voice rising despite my desperate efforts to stay calm, to maintain my composure. Do you think Kevin died so that you could buy a new car or go on cruises? That money is for his daughter's future. My father stood up abruptly, his face reddening with anger, his eyes blazing. Now you listen here. We are your parents. We raised you, fed you, clothed you. You owe us respect and consideration. Respect, I laughed bitterly, a harsh, humorless sound that echoed in the tense room. You haven't shown me or Lily an ounce of respect or genuine concern since Kevin died. All you care about is what you can get from us. That's not true. My mother protested weakly, her voice thin and reedy. We care about you, Rachel. We're just trying to be practical. Practical, I repeated, my voice imbued with a withering contempt. Would be asking how your granddaughter is coping with losing her father. Practical would be offering to help with meals or housework or emotional support. Not this. This vulture behavior. The room fell silent again, a thick, suffocating quiet. My Uncle Terry looked uncomfortably at the floor, while his wife Barbara glared openly at my father, clearly as appalled as I was by the blatant avarice on display. Into this tense, pregnant silence, Lily, my brave, small daughter, suddenly stepped forward, still clutching her manila envelope to her chest. "I have something to say," she announced, her voice clear and strong, startling everyone, drawing every gaze to her diminutive figure. My mother attempted a condescending, patronizing smile. "Sweetie, the adults are talking about important things right now." Lily stood her ground, her small shoulders squared, channeling Kevin's quiet confidence, his unwavering resolve. "This is important too. It's about my daddy and what he would want." Her eyes, so much like Kevin's, turned to her, this small figure standing so bravely in the center of adult conflict. Even Sophia, for once, put down her phone. "Daddy taught me that when people show you who they really are, you should believe them," Lily said, her voice only slightly trembling, a testament to her courage. "And when people only come around when they want something, they're not really family." She turned to face my parents directly, her gaze unwavering, unflinching. "You didn't come to see us when Daddy died. You didn't help Mom when she was crying every night. You didn't ask me if I was okay, or if I needed anything. You only came when you wanted money." The raw, unvarnished truth, delivered with such clarity and innocence from an 8-year-old's mouth, seemed to land differently, to cut deeper, than when I had said similar things moments before. My mother's carefully composed face crumpled slightly, her mask of composure finally cracking, while my father seemed utterly at a loss for words, his usual bluster deflated. Lily opened her envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper, held it up for a moment, then walked over and handed it to my father. "I made something for you," she said, her voice softer now, "because I know that's why you really came to see us." It was a child's drawing, but as I glimpsed it over his shoulder, I saw it was meticulously designed to look like an invoice. At the top, in Lily's careful, childlike handwriting, it read, "Bill for real love and support." Below, she had listed items. Being there when Daddy died, also not provided. Helping Mom when she was sad, $, not provided. Hugging me when I cried for Daddy, $, not provided. And then, in a larger, bolder script, being real grandparents, saying, "Priceless but not paid." At the very bottom, in a neatly drawn box, was a total Lurbaev. Then, in smaller, almost whispered words, "That's why you came, right? For money. This is what you earned." The silence in the room was absolute, deafening, broken only by the faint sound of my mother's quiet sobs. My father's hands trembled visibly as he held the paper, his face a mask of shock and dawning comprehension. My mother began to cry, whether from genuine shame or manipulative tears, I couldn't tell. Sophia stared at Lily with an expression of stunned disbelief, as if seeing her niece, truly seeing her, for the very first time. "I think we're done here," I said quietly, taking Lily's hand, drawing her close to me. "Don't contact us again unless it's to apologize and show genuine change. Lily deserves better grandparents than you've been, and I deserve better parents." As we walked out, leaving my stunned, silent family behind, I felt a strange, profound mixture of sorrow and liberation. We had lost more than Kevin. We had lost the illusion of a supportive, extended family, a dream I had clung to for so long. But in that loss, there was also clarity, a sharp, unblinking realization of who they truly were, and the freedom to rebuild our lives without the crushing burden of toxic obligations. In the car, I hugged Lily tightly, pulling her into my lap. "That was incredibly brave, sweetie," I murmured, my voice thick with emotion. I'm so proud of you. She hugged me back, her small arms wrapped around my neck. Daddy always said we have to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. Was I right, Mom? Yes. Baby? I assured her, tears streaming down my face, hot and cleansing. You were absolutely, perfectly right. The drive to my parents' house had been tense, with Lily unusually quiet beside me. That manila envelope clutched tightly in her small hands. I'd been so focused on preparing for the confrontation with my parents, consumed by my own anger and resolve, that I hadn't paid enough attention to what my daughter was planning, to the quiet brilliance brewing in her young mind. Now, as we drove away from the house where I grew up, leaving a shattered past behind, I felt equal parts soaring pride in her courage and profound sadness that she had to grow up so fast, forced to confront such harsh truths at such a tender age. Lily, how did you come up with that idea for the bill? I asked as we drove home, the quiet hum of the engine a soothing backdrop to our conversation. She gazed out the window for a moment, her gaze distant, thoughtful, before answering. Daddy and I were watching a movie, once where someone gave an invoice to a mean person. Daddy said sometimes, people need to see on paper what they're really worth. Her voice cracked slightly, a fleeting vulnerability. I think Grandpa and Grandma needed to see that they haven't been worth much to us lately. The startling wisdom in her words, echoing Kevin's values, brought fresh tears to my eyes. Your daddy would be so proud of you today. I told her, reaching over to squeeze her hand. So am I. My phone began buzzing incessantly, a relentless barrage of calls and texts from my family, but I ignored them all. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a boundary being firmly established, a line drawn in the sand. Whatever fallout came from this confrontation would have to wait until Lily and I had processed what had happened, until we had time to simply breathe. When we got home, Marcus was waiting on our porch. He had flown in early from Japan, wanting to surprise us, and Ellen, our wonderful neighbor, had given him the spare key to wait inside. Seeing him so much like Kevin in his gestures, his comforting presence, his gentle smile, was both intensely painful and deeply comforting. How did it go? He asked, embracing us both in a strong, protective hug. Aunt Lily was amazing, Lily declared before I could even answer, her small voice brimming with pride. She stood up to Grandpa and made him see that he was being mean about Daddy's money. Marcus raised an eyebrow at me, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. Aunt Lily. I smiled despite everything, a genuine, if wary smile. Apparently. I've been promoted from Mom to Aunt Lily for bravery points. Over dinner, the three of us huddled around the kitchen table, Lily recounting every detail of the confrontation at my parents' house. Marcus's expression darkened when I described my father's brazen distribution plan, but he broke into a proud, knowing smile when Lily explained her invoice idea. That's pure Kevin right there, he said, ruffling Lily's hair affectionately. Creative problem solving with just the right amount of well-deserved guilt trip. That night, after Lily finally drifted off to sleep, Marcus and I sat in the kitchen, drinking tea, the quiet hum of the refrigerator the only sound, talking about next steps. They'll try again, he warned me, his voice serious. People like your parents don't give up easily when money is involved. I nodded, the familiar weight of my father's stubborn persistence throughout my childhood settling heavily on me. I know, but I'm not going to give in. Not just because it's wrong, but because it would betray Kevin's explicit wishes, his careful planning to protect us. Have you thought about what this means for your relationship with them going forward? Marcus asked gently, his tone probing but kind. It was a question I'd been actively avoiding since the confrontation, the enormity of it too daunting to face. I don't know, I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. Part of me wants to cut them off completely. They've shown their true colors so clearly, so irrevocably. But another part of me wonders if that's fair to Lily. They're her only grandparents on my side. Are bad grandparents better than no grandparents? Marcus countered, his gaze steady, thoughtful. Kevin's parents adore Lily, and they actually show up for her. Quality over quantity, right? He had a point, an undeniable truth that resonated deeply within me. Diana and Robert had called Lily every other day since Kevin's death, sent thoughtful care packages filled with her favorite things, and were planning an extended visit. They were grieving too, in their own profound way, but they consistently, lovingly, put their granddaughter's needs first. The next morning, my phone showed 8 missed calls from my mother, 3 from my father, and 1 from Sophia. There were also numerous text messages, ranging from angry accusations to tearful, pleading apologies that felt more like calculated manipulation than genuine remorse. I decided to respond to just one message, a plaintive text from my mother. We need to talk about what happened. My reply was simple, firm, and clear. There's nothing to talk about until you can acknowledge the harm you've caused and show real change. Lily and I need time and space. Then, with a deep breath and a sense of resolve, I blocked their numbers, a temporary measure, a necessary act of self-preservation to give us breathing room, to create a safe space for healing. I also emailed Thomas to inform him of what had transpired, and asked him to be on alert for any legal maneuvers my parents might attempt, though he had already assured me they had no grounds for any claims. Over the next few days, my parents tried various, increasingly desperate approaches to re-establish contact. They sent flowers with insincere apology cards that spoke vaguely of family misunderstandings. They attempted to reach me through mutual friends, leveraging old loyalties. My father even showed up at my workplace, only to be politely but firmly turned away by security when I refused to see him. Surprisingly, it was my Aunt Barbara, Uncle Terry's wife, who provided an unexpected source of genuine support. She called from her personal phone, which I hadn't blocked, asking if we could meet for coffee. Wary but curious, I agreed. I want you to know that not everyone in the family supports what Brad and Carol did. She told me when we met, referring to my parents, her voice earnest. Terry and I were horrified. We only went to that meeting because they told us it was about planning memorial scholarship in Kevin's name. They lied to us. Her honesty was refreshing, a validating balm to my wounded spirit. It helped to know that not all of my extended family were complicit in my parents' mercenary scheme. They've always favored Sophia, Barbara continued, confirming what I'd felt but doubted for years, the unspoken truth of my childhood. We've all seen it, but no one wanted to interfere. Maybe we should have. A week after the confrontation, a formal letter arrived from my father, written on his business stationery, as if to lend weight and gravitas to his words. It stated that unless I was willing to come to a reasonable financial arrangement with them, they would be forced to reconsider our relationship with you and Lily entirely. It was meant to be threatening, I suppose, this chilling idea that they would cut us off, sever all ties. Instead, it felt like a strange, perverse permission to move forward without the crushing burden of toxic relationships to finally break free. I filed the letter with Thomas, just in case it was ever needed as evidence of their true intentions. 2 weeks after our confrontation, my mother tried a new, even more desperate tactic, showing up at Lily's school at pick-up time. Fortunately, I had already informed the school about the situation, explaining the need for distance and boundaries, and they called me immediately. By the time I arrived, the principal had politely but firmly asked my mother to leave, reminding her that only authorized individuals could interact with students. Standing in the school parking lot, my mother looked smaller somehow, less imposing than she had throughout my childhood. Her carefully constructed authority diminished. "You're turning everyone against us," she accused, her voice trembling with self-pity when she saw me. "No, Mom," I replied evenly, my voice calm but firm. Your own actions are doing that. Please don't come to Lily's school again. If you want to rebuild a relationship with us, it needs to start with respect for our boundaries, for our pain. But we're your parents. She protested, tears forming in her eyes, a familiar, manipulative cascade. You can't just cut us out of your life. I'm not cutting you out, I clarified, my voice unwavering. I'm asking you to step back and reconsider how you want to be part of our lives. Do you want to be the grandparents who support and love Lily unconditionally, or the ones who saw her father's death as a financial opportunity? The choice is yours, but there are consequences either way. She didn't have an answer for that. Her words caught in her throat, and we parted without resolution. It was the last direct contact I had with either of my parents for nearly 2 months. During that time, I focused intensely on Lily, on starting to build our new normal, a life without Kevin, but filled with the unwavering support of those who truly cared for us. Marcus stayed with us for 3 months, his presence a daily reminder of Kevin in the best possible way. He didn't try to replace his brother. Couldn't possibly, but his quiet, steady presence kept Kevin's memory alive for Lily in countless small ways, from the same quirky sense of humor to shared mannerisms that sometimes caught me off guard, making my heart ache and swell with love simultaneously. He taught Lily to play chess, something Kevin had planned to do, their heads bent together over the board for hours. He helped me sort through Kevin's belongings when I was finally ready, sharing funny stories and poignant memories that made the painful task bearable, even, at times, joyful. Kevin's parents visited for extended periods, filling our home with warmth, with genuine, unconditional love, their grief mingling with ours in a shared embrace. Diana taught Lily to bake Kevin's favorite chocolate chip cookies, maintaining a tangible connection to her father through shared activities. Robert took her fishing, patiently showing her how to tie the same complex knots Kevin had learned from him decades earlier. Meanwhile, news of my parents' shocking behavior, like a slow-burning ember, spread through the family grapevine. Aunt Rita called to offer a heartfelt apology for her presence at the ambush, explaining that she'd been told it was a gathering to discuss supporting us. Uncle James, who had initially seemed aligned with my father, sent a card expressing his deep regret for not speaking up during the confrontation, a rare admission of shame. Even Sophia eventually sent an email that, while stopping short of a full apology, acknowledged that the timing of their financial requests had been insensitive. It wasn't much, but it was the first time in our adult lives that she had conceded any wrongdoing, a tiny crack in her formidable armor of self-righteousness. 3 months after Kevin's death, on what would have been our 13th wedding anniversary, a day that weighed heavily on my heart, I received another letter from my parents. This one came in a plain envelope, handwritten rather than typed on business letterhead. It was the first communication from them that felt potentially genuine, stripped of artifice. Dear Rachel and Lily, it began. We've spent these past weeks reflecting deeply on our behavior and the immense pain we've caused you both during an already unbearable time of loss. There are no excuses for what we did. We allowed greed and self-interest to override our love and responsibility as parents and grandparents. We failed you both, and we failed Kevin's memory. The letter continued with specific, unvarnished acknowledgments of their actions, from missing the funeral to the attempted financial grab, without the vague, evasive language of their previous apologies. They didn't ask for forgiveness or for contact to be resumed, only expressed a quiet hope that, someday we might have the opportunity to demonstrate through actions, not just words, that we can change. I read the letter several times, searching for hidden motives, trying to gauge its sincerity. Then I showed it to Marcus, needing his clear-eyed perspective before deciding whether to share it with Lily. It seems different from their other attempts, he observed cautiously, his brow furrowed. Less manipulative, more accountable. But ultimately, it's your call whether to believe it, whether to open that door. I tucked the letter away, not yet ready to make a decision about how or whether to respond. The wound was still too fresh, the betrayal too profound. Time would tell if their remorse was genuine or just another, more sophisticated, strategy. For now, Lily and I were focusing fiercely on healing, on building our life without Kevin, but with his values and love as our unwavering foundation. Whatever happened with my parents would be determined by their actions going forward, not by promises or apologies, however well crafted. As Marcus prepared to return to Japan, with plans to visit again soon, he helped me organize a memorial gathering on Kevin's birthday, a day that used to be filled with laughter and cake. Unlike the funeral, which had been somber and formal, this was a vibrant, joyful celebration of Kevin's life, held in our backyard with his favorite barbecue food and his eclectic music playlist drifting through the air. Friends and colleagues shared funny, heartwarming stories about Kevin, their laughter mingling with tears. His parents brought old photo albums from his childhood, sharing glimpses of the boy he was. Lily, with a quiet solemnity, presented a memory book she had created, filled with ticket stubs, notes, and mementos of activities with her father, each page a tribute to their bond. Notably absent were my parents and Sophia, who had not been invited. It was a boundary I needed to maintain for now, creating a safe, protected space for grief and remembrance without the tension or judgment their presence would inevitably bring. As the gathering wound down and guests began to leave, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the yard, Lily tugged gently at my sleeve. "Mom," she asked quietly, her voice small, thoughtful, "can we invite Grandma and Grandpa next time?" "Which grandparents, sweetie?" I asked, though I knew exactly who she meant. "Mum's parents," she clarified, her eyes wide and earnest. "The ones who asked for money. I think Daddy would want us to give them another chance if they're really sorry." Her compassion, so like Kevin's, so immense and unyielding, brought fresh tears to my eyes. "We'll see," I promised her, my voice thick with emotion. "If they show us they've really changed, if their actions match their words, maybe next time." It wasn't forgiveness exactly, not yet. But it was an opening, a tentative possibility that the future might include some form of reconciliation, a fragile bridge built on genuine effort. For now, that was enough. The envelope confrontation marked an undeniable turning point in our lives, a seismic shift in our family landscape. In the immediate aftermath, the division in my extended family was stark and painful, a chasm that seemed unbridgeable. Some relatives sided firmly with my parents, viewing me as the ungrateful, uncharitable daughter who refused to help family. Others, however, recognized the inappropriate, indeed predatory, nature of my parents' demands and offered quiet, unwavering support, their empathy a lifeline. My Aunt Barbara became an unexpected, consistent ally, calling regularly to check on Lily and me, passing along family news without pressure or judgment, her voice a soothing balm. Uncle Terry, though less demonstrative, showed his support by quietly sending Lily books and science kits. Remembering her interests in a way my parents rarely had, his gestures a silent form of love. The most surprising reaction came from my cousin Jennifer, Sophia's daughter, who was in her early 20s. She reached out via email about a month after the confrontation, her words earnest and sincere. "I've always seen how differently Grandma and Grandpa treated you compared to Mom," she wrote, her honesty striking. "What they did after Kevin died was inexcusable. And I want you to know that not everyone in the family thinks you're wrong for standing your ground." Her message meant more than she could know, a profound validation from an unexpected source, assuring me that I wasn't crazy or selfish for protecting Lily's future, for putting her being first. My parents' initial reaction to being cut off was a calculated campaign of manipulation and emotional blackmail. They enlisted various family members to plead their case, sent a barrage of guilt-inducing emails, and even attempted to use Lily's school as a point of contact, their desperation showing. When these efforts failed, they shifted tactics to more direct threats, suggesting they might contest the will, despite having absolutely no legal grounds to do so. Thomas, Kevin's steadfast lawyer friend, responded to these baseless threats with a firmly worded legal letter, outlining the utter baselessness of any potential claims and clearly detailing the possible consequences of harassment. After that, the direct pressure eased, though the emotional fallout continued to ripple through our lives. Throughout this difficult, tumultuous period, I was surprised by how many people stepped forward, seemingly out of nowhere, to support us. Kevin's colleagues, a testament to his character, established a college fund for Lily, separate from what Kevin had already meticulously arranged, a gesture that brought tears to my eyes. My neighbor Ellen, a retired teacher with a boundless heart, helped Lily with homework when grief made concentration difficult, her patience a quiet gift. Even my boss at the architectural firm, where I worked as an office manager, showed unexpected compassion, allowing me flexible hours to attend grief counseling sessions with Lily, understanding the profound impact of our loss. 6 months after Kevin's death, Marcus returned for another extended visit, this time with truly transformative news. "I'm transferring to the university here," he announced over dinner one night, his voice brimming with excitement, glancing at Lily, who was practically bouncing in her seat. "I've been offered a position in the linguistics department starting next semester." "You're moving back to the States?" I asked, genuinely surprised. Marcus had been living in Japan for nearly a decade, his life firmly rooted there. He nodded, his eyes warm, fixed on Lily. "Kevin made me promise to be there for you both. It's easier to keep that promise if I'm in the same country, ideally the same city." The decision to reconfigure our lives without Kevin, to navigate this new daunting landscape, wasn't simple, but having Marcus nearby, a steady, loving presence, made it infinitely easier. He didn't try to replace his brother, couldn't possibly, but his presence kept Kevin's memory alive for Lily in countless small ways, from the same quirky sense of humor to shared mannerisms that sometimes caught me off guard, making my heart ache and swell with love simultaneously. On Lily's 9th birthday, 4 months after the dramatic confrontation with my parents, I received another letter from them. This one came in a plain envelope, handwritten, rather than typed on cold business letterhead. It came with a modest gift for Lily, a book about astronomy that actually aligned with her current interests, suggesting a level of thought and genuine consideration that had been entirely missing from previous gifts of Pink Princess items she had never cared for. The letter acknowledged the hurt they had caused and asked, not for money or even forgiveness, but simply for the opportunity to see Lily on her birthday. Even if just for 15 minutes, in a public place of your choosing, with you present the entire time. After discussing it with Lily, who was cautiously open to the idea, her natural curiosity outweighing her apprehension, I arranged for a brief meeting at her favorite ice cream shop. I set clear boundaries in my response. This was not a resumption of normal relations, but a tentative first step that would depend entirely on their behavior, on their respect for the parameters I established. The meeting was awkward, predictably so, but surprisingly free of drama. My parents seemed genuinely chastened, focusing entirely on Lily, asking appropriate questions about school and her interests without once bringing up money, the past conflict, or making demands. They had clearly rehearsed their approach, their discomfort palpable, but the effort itself, the willingness to adapt, showed a willingness to change that I hadn't expected. As we were leaving, my father, his voice quiet, almost hesitant, asked, "Could we possibly do this again sometime? Maybe next month?" It was the lack of entitlement in his request, the understanding that access to his granddaughter was a privilege to be earned, rather than a right to be demanded, that made me consider it. "Well, see," I replied, a small, tentative hope blossoming in my chest. "I'll let you know." That tentative beginning led to carefully structured, occasional visits over the next few months. My parents remained on probation, so to speak, but they consistently respected the boundaries I established. They never mentioned money again, never tried to see Lily without my permission, and gradually, through consistent actions rather than empty words, demonstrated that they understood the damage they had done, that they were willing to work to repair it. A year after Kevin's death, on the solemn anniversary, we held a memorial service, a private gathering of those who had truly loved him. Unlike the confrontation several months earlier, I chose to invite my parents, making it clear that this was a significant test of their commitment to rebuilding our relationship. To my immense relief, they came, appropriately somber and supportive, bringing a photo album of Kevin at family gatherings that I hadn't even known existed. A tangible offering of shared memories. They stayed in the background, not making the day about them or their relationship with me, but simply honoring Kevin's memory alongside everyone else who had loved him. After the service, my mother approached me cautiously, her eyes filled with a humility I had rarely seen. "We've been seeing a family therapist," she confessed, her voice low. "Trying to understand where we went so wrong, not just after Kevin died, but throughout your life, throughout our relationship. It's been illuminating." It wasn't an overnight transformation, and there were still awkward moments, old patterns that occasionally emerged. Moments of tension that reminded us of the chasm that had existed. But the effort was consistent, and over time, a new relationship began to take shape, one based on mutual respect rather than obligation or expectation. A fragile but genuine connection. Sophia took longer to come around. Her initial reaction to being cut off from access to Kevin's money was pure, unadulterated anger and resentment, manifesting in nasty social media posts and relentless attempts to turn family members against me. But as our parents gradually, demonstrably reformed their behavior, her isolated position became increasingly untenable, her bitterness less potent. Eventually, after nearly a year of minimal contact, she reached out with a genuine apology, tentative but sincere. "I've been jealous of you my whole life," she admitted during a tense coffee-fueled meeting, her voice raw with vulnerability. "You were always the smart one, the responsible one, the one who effortlessly achieved everything I struggled for. When Kevin died and left you financially secure, it just amplified every insecurity I've ever had, every fear of not being enough. It doesn't excuse what I did, but I want you to know I'm working on it." It was perhaps the honest conversation we'd ever had as sisters, a fragile, new beginning. It didn't immediately repair our relationship, but it opened a crucial door, a possibility of a healthier connection in the future. As for Lily and me, the journey through grief was ongoing, never truly ending, but it was evolving. The sharp, constant pain of early loss gradually transformed into something more manageable, a sadness that could coexist with moments of joy and hope. A part of our shared story, but not the entire narrative. Lily still had nights when she cried for her father, when his absence felt overwhelming. But she also had days filled with laughter, with the normal, delightful concerns of a vibrant 9-year-old. With Thomas's help, I established a foundation in Kevin's name, dedicated to providing financial education for underserved communities, something he had been deeply passionate about. Running the foundation gave me purpose beyond simply surviving day to day, a tangible way to honor his legacy, and connected me with people who shared Kevin's values, people who understood the importance of giving back. On the second anniversary of Kevin's death, a crisp autumn day, I took Lily to his favorite spot by the lake, a place of quiet reflection. We sat on a weathered bench, watching the gentle ripple of the water, remembering him together, sharing whispered stories and quiet smiles. "Mum," Lily said thoughtfully, her voice soft. "I think the envelope I gave Grandpa and Grandma helped them." "What makes you say that?" I asked, turning to face her, curious. "Well, they're different now," she said, her brow furrowed in concentration. "They listen more. They ask about my feelings. They remember what books I like." She picked up a smooth stone and skipped it across the water, the way Kevin had patiently taught her, each skip a small act of remembrance. Daddy always said sometimes people need to see themselves clearly before they can change. Your dad was very wise, I agreed, amazed yet again by my daughter's profound perception and remarkable resilience. "I still miss him every day," she said, her voice a small whisper. "But I think he'd be happy about how we're doing, don't you?" I put my arm around her, this remarkable child who carried so much of her father in her, his spirit, his kindness, his unwavering strength. "Yes, baby," I whispered, holding her close. "I think he'd be very, very proud of us both." The truth was, losing Kevin had revealed exactly who in our lives was truly family, and who was not, stripping away pretenses and exposing raw truths. Some relationships had been irreparably damaged, severed by betrayal and greed, while others had deepened in ways I never expected, forged in the crucible of shared grief and unwavering support. New connections had formed, creating a vibrant, resilient support system built on genuine care, on freely given love, rather than the brittle bonds of obligation. My parents were now cautious, tentative figures in our lives, working diligently to earn back trust, one respectful interaction at a time. Marcus had become a constant. Loving presence, an uncle who took his role seriously, a living link to Kevin's warmth and humor. Kevin's parents remained devoted grandparents. Their love for Lily a direct, profound extension of their boundless love for their son. And Lily and I had each other, bonded not just by grief, but by our shared experience of standing up for ourselves, of finding our voices, and discovering our own quiet strength in the process. The inheritance that my parents had so coveted, that they had seen as a financial windfall, went untouched, except for essential living expenses and Lily's meticulously managed education fund. The material security Kevin provided was invaluable, a practical buffer against the harsh realities of life, but his true legacy was in the values he instilled in us, the courage he inspired, and the boundless love that continued to guide our choices, to light our way forward. As we walked back from the lake that day, Lily slipped her hand into mine, her small fingers warm and trusting. "I think the best way to remember Daddy is to be kind but strong, like he was," she said, her voice clear and sure, "to help people, but not let them take advantage." "That's exactly right," I agreed, squeezing her hand, my heart overflowing. That's how we honor him every single day. The journey of grief isn't linear, and healing doesn't mean forgetting. There are still days when the absence of Kevin feels like a physical wound, when I reach for him in my sleep or start to tell him something mundane before remembering, with a sharp pang, that he isn't there. But those moments no longer define our lives. Instead, we've learned to carry him with us, embedded in the choices we make, the boundaries we maintain, and the love we continue to share. The family that emerged from our profound loss isn't the one I expected to have, the picture, perfect ideal I once cherished, but it's built on a foundation of genuine care and respect. Stronger and more resilient for having been tested by fire. If you've ever experienced family betrayal during grief, or had to stand up for yourself against those who should have supported you unconditionally, I hope our story reminds you that you're not alone. Sometimes the most difficult boundaries to establish are with the people we've been taught all our lives to accommodate, to prioritize, to please. But protecting yourself and those who depend on you, protecting their future and your own peace, isn't selfish. It's necessary. Please share your experiences in the comments if you feel comfortable. Like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. And remember that family is defined by love and respect, by unwavering presence, not just by blood. Thank you for listening to our journey, and I wish you the strength to honor your own worth in all your relationships.